power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Mark Zuckerberg can't stop us, and neither can Facebook servers. We are live, albeit not on the big book. But twitch.tv/Football Nation Radio is the place to be to watch FNR live. All of our regular listeners know that already. Higher quality, shorter live lag, and more interactivity. So keep those comments coming. We had absolutely terrific interaction on the shows last week, and we absolutely love it when we get listener comments and questions in during the show. Josh Parrish and Nick Dabano with you once again for another episode of Twilight Football. Joey Lynch, friend of the station, show favourite, joining us a little bit later, as is customary now when the Socceroos have a game coming up on an international break, to give us a little bit of insight into the changes in selection, the last-minute inclusions, what we might expect coming into these two games, one against Oman and one, the blockbuster, coming up against Japan, kicking off at the very specific time of 9:14 p.m. Eastern Daylight. Nick, how you doing?
I'm good. It's good to kick off at the very specific time of 6 p.m. for using how the Japanese Football Federation, or the AFC, whoever decides the kickoff times for next week, are going by. I remember with the A-League, it used to be 6 minutes after the hour when they used to start games.
7 minutes, I think. Like 7. That. The magic 7 minutes of dead time between the stated kickoff time. But that was an unofficial arrangement.
It was expected. Yeah, I think kickoff was 8 p.m. and then they'd start at 7 past. Just never expected to start on time.
Bizarre. At least the JFA are self-aware. They know they're going to be 14 minutes late, so they've built it into the schedule. You beauty.
Yeah.
We haven't had a chance, and it seems like it's been an age since the Daniel Sturridge signing was announced. He's already been on the project, so it's been out there for a while, but it was announced on Friday. We haven't had a chance on a live program to discuss it. What was your reaction when you saw the news? Daniel Sturridge to the glory, official.
I was mainly shocked at the velocity, and that it went from like a tiny link, a optimistic link at most, to Comunicado Oficial, Perth Glory social channels blowing up midday on Friday, wedged in between so much news on Friday. We had it literally came an hour before Gladys resigned, and it was like, not now, Gladys, you could save this, or just wait a bit longer, because Daniel Sturridge, arguably probably the biggest name to come and play here. I think probably since LPO, probably the highest caliber player to ever play in the A-League since then. This is a massive, massive signing. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I probably could touch on David Villa, but he wasn't here for long. That doesn't really count compared to this. But this is a big signing. I mean, in terms of another good friend of the station, Ante Jukic, uses the NRI, the Name Recognition Index, for the Australian football diaspora. This is a massive signing because huge Liverpool fan base. A lot of young generations who grew up watching the Premier League would have, gotten around and seen Daniel Sturridge play most of his time at Liverpool, maybe a little bit of Chelsea as well, and also as well for England. And look, I do have my sort of doubts in terms of what we're going to get from Daniel Sturridge on the field. If he stays fit, he could tear it up and, win the Golden Boot very much easily. He's very much well and clear at the best of the football build. He's the best player in the A-League in terms of what he can offer. But how long is he going to be on the pitch is my sort of question, Josh. How many games are we going to be able to get out of Daniel Sturridge in the summer on these hard pitches? Is his body going to crumble? Is he going to be able to play week in, week out? Are they going to rest him? How's it really going to work? And also as well, the other thing is that he hasn't played in almost 2 years. That's the other sort of doubt I have. He obviously had his betting suspension early last year when he was at Trabzonspor in Turkey, and hasn't kicked the ball in anger since then. He's been training at Mallorca. But look, you know what? In terms of his reach, in terms of what he would do for the A-League numbers and everything, crowds, just getting eyes on the product, it's a tick. It's just a matter of how much Daniel Sturridge are we going to see. I want to see him play every week, and I want him to be fit, and I want him to be scoring. It'll be great for the league. It'll be great for Perth. It's great for Perth to get a guy of that caliber to Perth Glory, because he's probably, they signed William Gallas, but are you going to be turning out numbers to watch a centre back, or are you going to be turning out numbers to watch Daniel Sturridge, who is a live wire? So yeah, it's
only one of them wearing the number 10
so
shirt though, Nick, and attempting overhead kicks.
Yes, absolutely.
Inject the William Gallas content into my veins.
Yeah, to be honest, it's kind of forgotten about William Gallas's short tenure in the West. But look, to sum it up, I'm excited for it in terms of what he will bring. I just want to see him play. That's all I want to see. I just want to see him on the park. And I hope that this one season turns into something longer. I hope he's here for quite a bit of time, because he is only 31.
Some good comments coming through. G'day to Tom and Dean who are watching. JB Blockboy, we had some great comments from last week. He's come through saying, Sturridge is huge on the socials. Do Australian players do enough to engage with fans on social media? Have a look at Liradon Krasniki, who is at the Jets, our friend. Huge social media following, which wasn't capitalised on. Well, I think in Liradon's case, the problem was he wasn't that good. He was fun. He was a lot of fun, but he didn't get enough minutes, and he wasn't good enough to get the minutes that he needed to make that kind of impact. But yes, the social media crew that seemed to follow him around, he seemed to have his own bespoke content creators with him at all times, like he was a TikTok star or something. That was fabulous value. Unfortunately, his tenure in the A-League was too short for him to become the cult hero that we hoped he would be. But I take the point about Daniel Sturridge's social media presence and also just his personality. I mean, just in that 3 or 4 minute project interview, it came across just how warm and funny and entertaining he's going to be in press conferences, in mix zones. There's a press conference coming up this Friday, which I've bookmarked in the diary for Zoom with the Glory, and I hope they put him up in front of as much media as possible. Obviously, the players' well-being has to be taken into account, and they don't want to be doing 3 million interviews. But every time Daniel Sturridge flashes his pearly whites in front of a camera, it's going to lead to more exposure for the A-League, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also as well, they've got to make sure they capitalise on it from a marketing standpoint. I mean, Australia is reopening. I don't know about Perth, to be honest. But, we know that in the next few weeks and months, once you reach vaccination rates, Australia is going to be reopening. It's a great way for him to, obviously, to market the league at the start of the year as well. Because, look, in terms of Australian football fans, and you think about him as a Liverpool fan, it's almost perfect that he's got his first game at home at Perth, so you get, full capacity, hopefully at HBF Park. Then he has like a Melbourne tour. He's got 3 games in a row in Melbourne. This is the time when, whether it's, sorry, I got a bit of glare in my eyes here, Josh, but Western United, Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, go do some stuff with Perth and try and, really pump it up. Daniel Sturridge is coming here, really use that as sort of the pull. Because I remember when Del Piero came and played his first game down here against Victory and against Melbourne Heart, it was massive. Like, he was getting numbers against Melbourne Heart, Josh. That's the thing you got to remember. Where Melbourne Heart were at that time, they were probably, when you think about crowd figures, at a similar level to, I guess, where Western United are. They were facing similar problems. But you're right. Get him in front of the cameras. Get him in any marketing you can. Get him on billboards. Anything that you possibly can. And I honestly think that could definitely be it. And you spoke about his infectious personality. He already wants to come up with an Australian dance for his celebration. So, you know what? Like, in terms of TikTok following and everything else with the young kids, they'll be loving that.
Infectious is probably the wrong word. I should probably come up with a new word. But that glare in your eyes coming from the West, the setting sun in the West, Nick, it's the star power beaming your
Of
way
Daniel Sturridge.
from out Perth
Yeah.
way. Look, I'm very excited about it. JB Block Boys brought up Dwight York as maybe a similar personality, a similar impact that Sturridge could make. I think that's a good comparison because it wasn't just the on-field stuff. It was also just how gregarious he was off the park that gave the A-League a serious boost. And he won a title in his first and only season in the country. So, that also helps. Look, Daniel Sturridge is a star and was absolutely world-class, especially in that period at Liverpool where they were contending for the league title under Brendan Rodgers. He was a bona fide superstar with some of the outrageous goals he was scoring. Of course, part of a trio with Coutinho and Luis Suarez as well. But this is a serious blue chip, actual marquee signing as opposed to some of the marquees we often get down here. But Nick, I think we better take a break because Joey Lynch is waiting on the other side to take us through the Socceroos' preparations for these World Cup qualifiers against Oman and, importantly, against Japan. That's the big one. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Sturridge signing with him, about the big Premier League interest in Aussie Harry Souttar, which has really raised some eyebrows over in the UK, his performances for Stoke City. And we're also going to talk about where the FFA Cup is at. Joey wrote a good piece about Football Australia considering allowing NPL clubs to recruit in between now and their planned fixtures to enable them to reinforce squads and actually be competitive, because we've already seen players being picked off by A-League clubs from these NPL squads in the intervening period. So by the time those games actually roll around, will they have a squad together to make a spectacle of it and make the wait worth it? We're going to talk about that with Joey Lynch on the other side of this break here on Twilight Football.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
We're back here on Twilight Football on FNR Football Nation Radio. Station favourite Joey Lynch joins us once again, as is customary before a Socceroos international break. We're going to make it a tradition here. We chat to Joey about all things Socceroos and the stories surrounding our national team players. But first, Joey, the comment section is going off about this Sturridge signing. You've written a piece for The Guardian about the merits of sugar hits, shall we say. Condense that for us a little bit. What was your takeaway from that announcement?
Well, I think in one of my first drafts of that piece that you can read in The Guardian, I compared the signing of Sturridge to a sugar hit, but a sugar hit perhaps for a type 1 diabetic. In situations such as that, when it is an emergency, so to speak, and you don't have anything quite at hand, going to the junk food aisle and grabbing a packet of Starburst might just be your best option. And whilst there still is quite a lot of positivity and what's the word that I'm looking for, hope for the A-League men competition and the A-Leagues in general in the coming months and years ahead, it's still in quite a fragile state at the moment. And there are a lot of questions about what can be done to re-establish itself, maybe, and start to push towards those highs that the competition did reach the last time we had a superstar marquee we've had a couple since then, but really Alessandro Del Piero, when he touched down, and the heights the league reached around that time with the explosion in active support and the Wanderers coming in as well. So it can work to that extent. Now, as I also pointed out, at some point Sturridge is actually going to have to play football, inconvenient as it might be. And that's where the questions for me really lie, because if anything, if he comes here, plays crap, gets injured, which isn't far-fetched when you look at his career and how long he's been out of the game, it could backfire on the A-Leagues if you basically build significant amount of your preseason hype, especially Perth Glory's preseason hype, around Sturridge, and he comes in and he gets his ankle put into Row Z in round 3 or 4 by some defender, and he can't play again. It's no good. So there are risks. I mean, at the same time, though, this is Daniel Sturridge. He came second in the Premier League Golden Boot race. You don't do that unless you're a good footballer. I know we can sometimes lose the forest for the trees and pace and power merchant, all that sort of stuff. He scored more than 20 goals in the Premier League. He should be able to bag at least double figures in the A-League. So he should play well, but it's not a guaranteed thing.
Well, in terms of, we were joking about it last week, Joey, about this player is available now, all sorts of free agents and everything. But do you think that, considering there are still some teams that could, potentially follow in suit and maybe try and bring in someone of that ilk to try and match it, thinking, when Newcastle brought in Heskey after Del Piero arrived, or Ono at the Wanderers?
I mean, never say never, and you never know with these sort of things. But at this stage of where roster composition is for most of the A-League sides, I'm not quite sure, combined with the talent that's currently out there, if you were to bring in another free agent, you need a combination, to match Sturridge, so to speak. It's not just that you bring in a high-profile free agent. They need to have, as we talk about, score high on the name brand recognition index. And that invariably means either having played at a notable level in the Premier League, or a special case like Del Piero that was so damn good that he didn't need Premier League notoriety to make an impact. And there's really not a lot of players out there that fit that capacity, and the clubs that could afford to do that at this stage. I mean, you talk about the Newcastle Jets, the 4 other A-League clubs that basically own the Newcastle Jets aren't going to push the boat out and buy them a potential difference-making marquee. So maybe your likes of Victory or City or Sydney could afford to, maybe the Wanderers, but none of them have shown the predilection to do that thus far this season. I think especially Melbourne City, they seem quite happy with their front. They've already got a front line of Socceroos. They don't really need anything else. Victory seems set in their popper ball ways, with a bunch of nondescripts, random foreigners that don't even have Wikipedia pages, some of them. Sydney, very quiet. Wanderers could, but I can't see the type of teams that could do this at such late notice making a splash now.
Yeah, I mean, if Perth are going for the name recognition index, I think Victory are signing players who've been in a witness protection program. Like, I don't think any of their names even register on a Google search. But Joey, one man whose name is getting recognised more and more over in the UK is Harry Souttar. He's been scouted, allegedly, by Everton and Spurs. Reading here from the, frankly, fawning coverage of his performances in Stoke-on-Trent live, Souttar is only 22, 6 foot 7 inches tall and has everything. Comparisons in the last couple of months have come with Alan Hansen, Harry Maguire, Abdoulaye Faye and a Rolls-Royce. He is looking in the championship how Virgil van Dijk must have done in Scotland. I mean, that's high praise, even if it is from his local paper.
It's high praise from his local paper. I mean, whenever you hear these stories about, they're scouting players in certain leagues, well, I mean, when you take a step back and you look at the scouting networks that these Premier Leagues will have, I'd be asking the question more so, hearing that the Everton and Spurs have been scouting Harry Souttar, I'd be asking, well, why haven't Arsenal and Man United and Man City been doing so as well? Because they've got so many scouts there. Surely at some point they've all done it. I mean, I'd have expected, to be honest, you'd expect these clubs to have a scouting dossier, not just on Harry Souttar, but to be honest, I remember reading a interview and listening to an interview with a Premier League executive last year. These clubs pretty much have scouting dossiers on every player that appears at a major youth international tournament. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of these Premier League clubs that at least have a dossier or at least a couple of words on file somewhere about, a Nate Atkinson or a Dylan Piraeus purely because they played for the Olyroos and the Olympics. So,
Joey, if I might interject, I mean, Duncan Ferguson was spotted at a Stoke City game. Do you send the top man? Do you send Big Dunk if you're not serious about it?
I mean, I can see it happening. I mean, like I said, Harry Souttar's in a much better position to earn a move to the Premier League than Lockie Wales is. But I can see it happening, but it's a big leap. Stoke we meme about Spurs, but Spurs are a big club in English football. So are Everton. But could it happen? It could happen and it would be great. But I see in terms of career trajectory, it's Souttar's life. He can do what he wants. And he probably has a lot more smarter people than me advising him. But you get the feeling long term, it would be better for him to maybe go up with Stoke if they can manage that, or earn a move to a mid to lower tier Premier League side where he can maybe start a bit more regularly week in and week out, because I don't see him starting week in and week out for Spurs or Everton at the moment.
Well, it's funny because you read the reports, they're saying he's a replacement for Yerry Mina and all that sort of stuff. I think that people need to probably taper their expectations of Harry Souttar. And unfortunately, we're not playing Nepal this week, so you can go and score a hat-trick against 5'5" defenders. Talking a bit about, let's talk a little bit about the Roos. Big game this week on Friday against Oman. Tricky opposition though. I mean, they beat Japan. They're going to sit back. What are you expecting?
Pretty much that. I expect Oman, as they did against Japan and as they attempted to do against Saudi Arabia, they're going to sit back and they're going to try to stage a smash and grab victory to take back to Oman with them. And it could happen. We've seen this Australia side. We saw it against Vietnam in their previous hit out, especially in the second half. When Vietnam got out in transition, there were worrisome signs for the Socceroos. Now, I don't think the Socceroos will plumb the depths of mediocrity that they did in attack against Vietnam like they did against Oman, purely because A, it's going to be the first game, and B, as Arnold pointed out in his pre-game press conference, the surface at the Khalifa International Stadium is going to be about 1 million times better than the surface that they played on in Hanoi. So there won't be any worries about that. So I think it's the Socceroos, we should see them better in attack almost by default. The question will be, as we've seen, it won't be Milos Degenek. He can't come into the squad because he's got asymptomatic COVID. It will likely be Sainsbury and Souttar. They're not going to get beaten in the air against the Omanis, but what's going to happen in transition? That is where the game will be made or break. Who The wing backs, we've seen, I'm guessing it's probably going to be Ryan Grant starting at right back again with Aziz Baich on the left. Will those two be asked to sit back a little bit more by Arnold, knowing that his midfield's going to have run of the game anyway? Do they sit back and defend transition, or do they get up, and does Australia get caught out on the counter? Who does Arnold play as his six in that game to get back? Because we saw, particularly against Vietnam, it was a situation when Ryan Grant was so high up the field that Jackson Irvine was basically playing as a third centre back because he had to stay so far back and just defend against possible transitions. So there's a lot of interesting questions, I think, about how the Socceroos set up, not just going forward with the mountains of possession they will no doubt have, but how that in turn affects how they set up defensively as well to shut down the counter-attack of Omanis. And then subsequently, it's going to be really interesting after that, because then they probably get the chance for the first time in a long time to play against a side in Japan that are probably going to be the proactive team that are going to want the ball, so to speak. So that's going to be fascinating as well.
Yeah, different dynamic than what we're used to. I mean, we've got Martin Boyle back for this one, which is certainly an attacking weapon that was sorely missed against Vietnam. The most interesting thing for me is what you brought up there, the composition of the midfield. And I certainly felt, it wasn't a universal opinion I found on Twitter afterwards, but I certainly felt that we saw further signs of Aaron Moy and Tom Rogic's incompatibility. And after he came off the bench, it didn't seem like those two really click in the same midfield. If you're Graham Arnold going into this Oman game, knowing that you're playing against an opponent who will not try to come at you and will only take risks and commit players forward in transition moments, who do you pick as your two holders and your number 10?
There could be a case made, perhaps, that you don't even play two holders. You play one holder and two 10s, which in effect might give the opportunity to play, if Rogic is a walk-up starter for this Socceroos side, which I'm guessing he might be. Does that give you the opportunity then to maybe play a Hrustic next to him moving forward? Because we've got to assume Boyle will come back onto one of the wings. Do you play Hrustic and Rogic as two 10s, assuming you're going to have a lot of the ball so that they can get in? And then maybe do you play a Jackson Irvine as your 6? Do you play a Denny Jonro as a 6, or do you play Aaron Moy as a 6, even though, as we've been talking about, Aaron Moy's lack of work rate on the defensive side of things might leave you very exposed on the transition? Or we might see, as you said, the inverse. He could just go with what he tried against Vietnam, assuming that the better quality pitch is going to give Rogic and Moy more opportunities to combine and link up and work better. I personally wouldn't play Moy simply because he's not really playing. With Shanghai, we've seen he's not getting these match minutes now. Maybe you can get away with that in the previous games because nobody was really playing. The seasons were so young. But now we've had another month, and you're getting situations where in a lot of these players, Jackson Irvine, after previously not playing for St. Pauli, is now playing week in and week out in Germany. Denny Jonro is now starting week in and week out in the French second tier. Rogic is still playing in Scotland. I mean, if anything, Hrustic is maybe the other one that's gone a bit backwards in his game time in Germany. But players, I think Jago's playing in Greece as well. So players are beginning to get form now and generate minutes. And you've got to weigh up how much does that come into it when you are selecting these sides, because I interviewed Denny Jonro the other day, and he made a really good point. You don't really train in national team camps. You get maybe 1 or 2 sessions and then you play a game. You can't really demonstrate how in form you are in training with the national team. It's got to come from your clubs. And if you're not in form at the clubs, it's very difficult to demonstrate that you actually are sharp in training before the national team starts playing their games.
We've got some comments coming through.
We talk about, well, I know.
Sorry, Nick. Little delay on your internet there. You lost your chance. We've got some comments coming through. T. Pato coming in strong for Kenny Dougal starting at 6, shielding the back centre backs and allowing the fullbacks to bomb on high. I'm not sure Kenny Dougal's really in contention for a start. I think Jackson Irvine is ahead of him in the pack order, I suppose, because, I mean, for all his good work, Kenny Dougal's not playing at the level that Irvine is, just in terms of the league structure.
Yeah, and I think you also have to take into account with a lot of these things who's picking the side. It's Graham Arnold, and Graham Arnold's, like any coach, has his favourites, and he's got his own internal narratives surrounding who he wants to promote. So you've got the long-standing players that have been there and done that for the Australian sides, who Arnold has watched, who he will, even if he doesn't consciously do it, who he will favour. And he's also got this stated mission of bringing through Ollie Roos-aged young players and integrating them into the national setup, which it probably won't serve as a definitive guide to who plays, but it can easily serve as a tiebreaker, which is good news for players like Denny Jonro and Riley McGree, who do fit that archetype and are probably would be widely considered the future of this Socceroos side, which will no doubt play into Arnold's thinking.
Nick, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. Sorry about the internet problems there. Hopefully coming through right now. But Joey, you tried to get the litmus test out of the litmus test line out of Arnie the other day. Ask for your opinion now about this. How big are these games? Because there's no sugarcoating difference between China and Vietnam, Japan especially. How big is it to just get the confidence up, but also to win these games, to really get in a good position in this group right now?
I'd say that it's a big game in the sense that not only do you find out just what Australia is made of, but there is a distinct possibility that hypothetically, when the Socceroos and Japan play each other next week, that could almost be a de facto elimination game for Japan. Japan are playing Saudi Arabia away from home in their first game of this international window. They've already lost to Oman. If Japan lose to Saudi Arabia, only have one win from 2 games, and then lose to Australia, that will give them 3 points of a possible 12, almost halfway through the qualification stages, including 2 home defeats. That in a qualifying group that, Asian qualifying at this stage is always competitive with just 2 games, with just 2 automatic qualifiers, that could almost effectively end Japan's hopes of automatically qualifying for the World Cup, because they would have to travel to face Australia in the return leg. At that point, we are almost certain that Australia will be playing home qualifiers again. So you'd have to think that Australia would be good chances to at least get a point in that return leg. And they'll have to play Saudi Arabia again. They'll have to play Oman again on the road this time. So at that point, with Australia and Saudi Arabia possibly being on 12 points from a possible 12, at that point, they're almost consigned to having to scrap and claw for the playoffs. So in that sense, I think it's a huge game, more so not just because, we'll figure out where the Socceroos group is playing against what is ostensibly the best side in that group. But the Socceroos can effectively kill off one of their major rivals 4 games into this phase of qualification. That's huge. So that's going to be really something to watch out for.
I mean, Australia's almost never beaten Japan in Japan. I don't recall the last time Australia got a result away in Japan. I mean, this would be an ideal time to scrap out for a 0-0 or a 1-1 draw, surely. That would be a success, a win and a draw from these 2 games.
I would say yes, in theory, but having seen what happened the last time a Graham Arnold Australia side played for a draw, I would rather see them go for at least a 1-0 or 2-0 win. I would rather see them expect to win.
Yes, indeed. You can't expect a draw. It's not a good mentality.
No. And I think Arnold's will be conscious that he can effectively knock Japan off the automatic qualification points if results do fall a certain way in the opening games. And I think that will be important to him and his side heading into that game, because they'll effectively at that point be playing with house money. Nobody expects them to get a result, but if they do, the jackpot is just so astronomically high. What have you got to lose?
Well, just on that point about just a little bit of a quick trivia. I mean, just quickly had a look. Last time Australia got a result was back in 2013. It was again 1-1, and they actually were up with a minute or so to go and conceded a late penalty against Keisuke Honda. So it was Holger Osik to last get a result in Japan. So it goes to show how long that's been.
Didn't Angie's team get a draw with Tommy Orr's deflected goal?
That's the same game.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that was Holger Osik.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So
I remember the Brad Smith marking
yeah.
error in the last minute. That was Ange. Okay, I'm just trying to test my memory here. But more questions coming through on the live streams. JB asks, will 2 results shut the Arnie haters up? Well, probably not me. Probably not. Yao Young asks, Duke or Taggart leading the line? And T. Pato, who's the next Australian Souttar aside that could be on the cusp of the Premier League? Any of those you'd like to answer, Joe?
Taggart to start up front. Wouldn't shut the Arnold haters up. And quite frankly, you don't ever want to shut any haters of the national team coach up, because it is a job that is supposed to come with scrutiny. He's not coaching his son's under 12 side. He is coaching the senior national team. And as such, should be scrutinized for literally every decision, because he does have ostensibly one of the 2 most important jobs in Australian football, the other one being Tony Gustafsson's job. And on the third one, coming into this season, you might have said Riley McGree, but it appears as though he's really fallen off the radar at Birmingham. You would have to say it's more likely at this stage to be one of these up-and-coming youngsters that have really been making a name for themselves with the Olyroos. We've seen Cameron Devlin recently move over to Scotland and do his best Pitbull impression for Hearts, and that's quickly winning, for lack of a better word, hearts and minds over there in Scotland. Mentioned it before, Dennis Yonro is now starting, at this stage, he's starting week in and week out for top of League 2 Toulouse. If he keeps playing as a 10, and serving as a real creative force for their promotion push into Ligue 1. You never know what could happen on that front. Riley McGree, as I say, could come good at Birmingham. Somebody like Daniel Arzani is technically still a Manchester City player. And I did note that with his game for Lommel, before he jetted out to join the Australian side, his total senior minutes at Lommel overtook the cumulative senior minutes he had recorded for every club since he left Melbourne City. So that tells you tells you what a low base he was starting from. But if he suddenly catches fire for Lommel and induces Manchester City to maybe loan him out again, re-sign him and loan him out again, you never know what he can do, because he's got the skills to do something, even if he might be better served playing on the continent. So I'm going to hazard a guess to say it's one of these young players that were playing at the Olympics, maybe a Nate Atkinson. He's in that Melbourne City pathway. He's had some interest from Belgium, maybe him, Connor Metcalf in that City Football Group pathway, had some interest from Spain. So one of these young players, I'd imagine.
As you rattled through all those names, Joey, I didn't really feel particularly optimistic about any of them. It seems as if Souttar is our great, big, tall, white hope in terms of having Premier League representation. Unless Aaron Moy decides to end his Chinese sojourn and Brighton will have him back or something.
I mean, Premier League's not the be-all and end-all, though. I mean,
yes, but it's important, I think, for Australian fans to have these guys over there to root for, because I mean,
psyche, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a morale thing in Australian football. It seems to be
Possibly.
important. Maybe it's not actually important for the performance of the national team or, Australian football strength as a whole. But in terms of prestige, I think it does matter to fans, certainly. Any more from you, Nick?
All good here, mate. All I was going to say was I think we should be rooting for, someone like Denny Jomro to rock up for a team like Fiorentina or Empoli or something in Serie A, because I reckon that would almost suit those sort of qualities brilliantly. But hey, not biased here, just your typical Italian fan over here, just putting up some love for the Italian league.
At Brescia,
Yeah, well,
maybe
if they
could
get
go on.
promoted, potentially.
Any top division would be fine by me. Oh, Joey, before we let you go, an article you published the other day about the FFA Cup and whether there will be any players left in the NPL squads by the time these games roll around. You might get some movement from Football Australia on this issue.
Yes, getting in touch with the Federation yesterday. A bit of a delay because Sydney had that public holiday yesterday, so they had to rustle up. But Football Australia spokesperson confirming that they are currently investigating allowing NPL squads to dip into the transfer market and bring in some form of reinforcement for the FFA Cup. And I think it was important. I'm not sure how much thought went into it, but being a journalist, I like to read into these sort of things. The statement I was provided with not only said for minimum squad level, which just infers, we'll let them call up as many youth players as they want. That's not a big deal. It also said competitiveness. And to me, competitiveness infers that, no, we'll actually let them go out and sign a few decent performers that are actually going to make sure that, we'll let South go out and sign some decent performers so that they don't get pumped 9-0 by Melbourne City, something like that. So please don't destroy my mentions. So that's what I'm. Not only will we see potentially some young players brought up into these squads by necessity, but that statement does leave the door open possibly for some more high-profile talent to be brought into NPL clubs' ranks for the round of 32 and onwards.
So you're telling me there's a chance that Noel Bernardo might go pow in the FFA Cup?
Possibly. He has been heavily linked with South Melbourne in one form or another, whether that is a permanent switch or just an FFA Cup switch is yet to be determined.
All right, Joey, as usual, an absolute pleasure. People can go check out your Twitter feed, links to all your work, buy you a coffee on your website, and Canteen, repping the Canteen. I love it.
Because it is National Bandana Day, the last Friday in October. Every single year is National Bandana Day. So I am wearing one of our new designs this year, the tie-dye Canteen design. We have also brought out camouflage this year, good for all your extracurricular activities at the football. But you can support National Bandana Day if you just put in if you Google Bandana Day. There are ways that you can support, and there is also a link to the online shop where you can buy Canteen bandanas and also Canteen bandana design face masks. Because no matter what some Twitter accounts might say, the pandemic's not over yet. And I get the feeling we'll be wearing face masks for quite a while.
All right, Joey, talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, guys. Thank you.
All right, we will take a short break here on Twilight Football. On the other side, we might turn our attention to Europe and specifically to Mo Salah's contract stoush. Stick around for that.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Final time this evening, Twilight Football. Let us know what you think of the time slot, by the way. We pushed it back an hour today, literally because there were NBN works in my area and we were worried about actually streaming the thing. So if you prefer 6 p.m. to 5 p.m, let us know if there's a better time slot for the listeners. We love the interaction. So many questions that we didn't quite get to with Joey. But Nick, we did advertise as we put the show promo up today. We were going to discuss the thorny topic of vaccine mandates and the possibility that fully vaccinated crowds at A-League games might also have to include fully vaccinated players, which seems to have caused some consternation in some unnamed clubs, with 8 members of one squad alleged to be opposed to receiving the jab. I mean, you and I, we're both vaccinated. Both part of the double jab club. This is a thorny topic for the players' union in particular. What do you expect is going to come of this?
Well, let's put this bluntly, right? Even if, the player doesn't get the vaccination, say in some states, the vaccine isn't mandated to play, they're going to run into roadblocks everywhere in terms of in terms of logistics of it. So think about flights. Will airlines allow certain players or people actually to go on if they're not double jabbed? What are the living arrangements for players when they travel? You think about, you look at sort of other leagues around the world, look at the NBA, how they basically have said if you choose not to, you have to basically live in a bubble. You can't have any social interaction for as long as you can, as long as the season goes on and everything else. You're not allowed to play in certain stadiums. It's going to be prickly. It's going to be very, very difficult because at the end of the day, as we have seen with one team, you're going to run into at least one or two. If you get a couple on side, I think that you're going to definitely run into that sort of roadblock. For me, look, we know, Josh, we're both double vaxxed. For me, getting it was a no-brainer. I know for yourself, with your circumstances as well, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's just no question. I had to.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is, if we want to get back to normal life, you trust the science. You listen to what Jurgen Klopp had to say the other day in terms of making it mandated and in terms of getting it, in terms of freedoms and everything else. The PFA need to try and come up with some sort of, middle ground, because unfortunately some of these guys, without naming names, they're pretty adamant. Based off, what we've seen, what the public have seen, they're pretty adamant in their stance. And clubs are going to have to make decisions. Now, we have seen the NBL. I think it was the Breakers went mutual with one player who was anti-vax and decided not to. You have to wonder, will some clubs potentially, depending on who the player is, depending on the circumstances, depending on how it all sort of works out with the PFA, will they have to get mutual with some players? This is a decision that's not just going to regard around where they're going to play, if they're going to be able to play in some states or what the go is, but whether it's even worth keeping them on the books if they can't. It's literally getting to that point, it almost seems.
And I don't think, to be clear, the the potential mandate is going to come from the league, as you say. It's
No.
likely to come from the stadiums. If players can't enter the stadium the game's being played in or fly on the airline to get them to the away game, I mean, how can the players' union come up with a coherent response to that? I don't think they're aiming to. I mean, what we're hearing, the whispers out of the PFA is they're not going to want to force their members to do anything in particular, but I don't think they're going to oppose it publicly. And it's a difficult subject for some players. Look, I suspect that once the livelihood is on the line, you're going to see a lot of this hesitancy suddenly disappear, and it's not going to be a big drama. It's something to keep an eye on in the coming weeks and months, but I just don't see a feasible scenario where we're going to have games with crowds back in action with players who are unvaccinated, because it's not like a normal, remote workplace at the moment. If they were E-League players or they were on Zoom in their office, they're not putting all their co-workers at risk. But in a team environment where you're traveling together and sometimes, showering together and training together all the time, and there's a lot of close physical contact between the players in the group, 1 or 2 or 3 or sometimes 8, as we're hearing out of one club, unvaccinated players is a legitimate risk, not only to the health of those players, but also to the competitiveness of the team. Because if you have to forfeit games as a result of an outbreak, and that's going to cause not only scheduling headaches, but it might actually cost the club points.
Well, think about it like this, Josh. You remember last season in Europe, how many teams throughout the big leagues, when COVID was really running rife in the last European winter and the COVID-affected nature of last season, how many teams, when they had mass outbreaks in a team and they'd have to either, postpone the games, or even in some cases look at Serie A. You remember the Napoli's sort of situation where that game against Juventus was postponed and was a forfeiture at one point, and there was all this legalities and everything else. If something like that happens here, think about it, if it gets to a point in the season where you've got a team that are on the periphery of the top 6 or periphery of the top 2, and it's a situation where if they don't play and they have to forfeit, they could miss finals or something like that. Because, you make finals, obviously you're going to get more prize money. You're going to have a chance to actually win some silverware. You have to forfeit that because you don't have the players to play because you've got players that are testing positive. Look, it's going to obviously create some headaches. And, I know that when you're vaccinated, you can still get it, but it's eliminating the risk of it. It's bringing that risk down of serious illness, hospitalizations, not just within your playing group, but the people around you as well. Because if you're vaccinated, you're putting those safeguards up. And look, for me, it's going to be prickly throughout this entire season, something we're going to have to learn to navigate. But it's going to be interesting to see how clubs manage this in terms of working out whether these players are going to be able to stay on the books or what the go is going to be from there. I know it sounds very, very drastic, but what we have seen with the NBL, especially with that precedent set with a player that they've just gone, you know what, it's just not going to work. I wonder if maybe something similar might be coming. At least it might happen with one player or one team. Who knows?
Yeah, look, something to keep an eye on. It might end up being something that football has to reckon with, the anti-vax sentiment in certain portions of the population. That's a think piece or an investigation for someone much smarter than me to write. But Nick, let's move on to European football from the weekend, which you say for the end of the program. And Mo Salah stole the headlines with his individual masterclass against Manchester City, which somehow City didn't win. I mean, you can talk about the red card that perhaps James Milner should have received, or the missed chances that Phil Foden left out there, despite his outstanding performance. But, I mean, this guy is a genuine superstar, perhaps the informed player in the world right now, maybe the best player in the world right now. And Liverpool still are seeming hesitant to break their imposed wage structure to keep this guy at the club. I mean, surely they have to get the checkbook out at some point for a special talent like Salah.
Isn't it just a no-brainer? It's Mo Salah, for God's sake. As you did say, probably he's the best player in the world right now, the most informed player in the world right now. What he did on the weekend, that goal he scored against City, was probably we've seen some cracking goals, but you think about the quality of the opposition, the way he mazed through players, and even the degree of difficulty from where he took the shot from was one of the goals of the season. It's a moment that you'd probably be talking about as young Liverpool fans and fans itself saying, I was there to see that goal. It'd be a real disappointment if Liverpool lose him for nothing. You know, I know that his contract is, I think there's 2 years left, but you don't want it to get to a point, and we have seen it. I've seen it as a Milan fan with Donnarumma, etc. You don't want to lose a player in a COVID environment now where any money you can get for players is a bonus after everything that clubs have lost right now. You don't want to have to lose a player like that for nothing. And, you know, I know he's now 29, but you got to sign your players. You got to keep them happy. And I think Liverpool just need to get the cash book out. They do. They really have to. And, you know, losing a player like him right now, considering their ambitions of winning the league this season, probably going for the Champions League as well, you're not going to be able to do it if Salah's not there. That's just being brutally honest. There's no one else of that quality.
I mean, they did concede to the contract demands of a post-ACL Virgil van Dijk. I guess they're worried about the flow-on effects of potentially Sadio Mane and Alexander-Arnold and all the rest wanting pay rises if Mo Salah breaks the sort of £350,000 a week mark. And setting aside the kind of moral argument, the moral quandary about whether anyone should be paid that much money to do anything, this is the going market rate for a player of that quality. And if Kevin De Bruyne is earning twice or 1.5 times what Mo Salah is, you know, something's gone wrong there and Salah isn't being paid what he deserves. I'm not sure, you know, which club is going to come in with a competing offer, you know, with the kind of low points that the two Spanish powerhouses are at the moment. Maybe Real Madrid is still a contender for his signature, as we heard 6 to 12 months ago. Still, I think Liverpool eventually going to have to pull the trigger on this because he's playing at a level right now where they rely on him very heavily. And it's not just the system getting the results. It's Salah's individual initiative. You know, Jurgen Klopp talked about in the post-match after the City fixture that they weren't making the extra pass in the first half and they were, you know, being skittish and not having the composure. But Salah wasn't making the extra pass. He was taking on the extra man.
Yeah.
You know, he beat 4 or 5 players to score that goal. And that's quality that you can't replace easily.
Well, you mentioned sort of the precedent about Sadio Mane and Alexander-Arnold. I think with a player like Mane, considering I know you wouldn't want to lose him, but if you had a choice, Mane or Salah, and you have to make that decision, if a big money offer did come through for Sadio Mane, you'd probably be more inclined to say yes to the Mane deal than the Salah deal. And you mentioned clubs that probably could afford him. There's only probably one team. That's PSG. And PSG's got everyone at the moment. I don't even know how they're going to be able to make it work.
Yeah, but if Mbappe leaves on a free at the end of the season...
Potentially, didn't think about that one. And there's always the rumor of Neymar, you know, going back to Barcelona, but he might not now that Messi's there. But, you know, who knows?
Barcelona's wage cap imposed by the league at the moment, I think, precludes that possibility.
So it's probably more likely Mbappe leaves, and that might open up the door. Who knows? But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I really hope for Liverpool's sake that they can work something out and keep him happy and keep him at the club for as long as they possibly can.
Could there be an audacious Manchester City swoop for Salah? I know he's not the striker and the profile of player that they were after. I mean, they seem to have a plethora of wide forwards at the moment. Well, maybe they could do a swap deal with Raheem Sterling.
But would their first target basically be Erling Haaland or Harry Kane? Probably more Haaland because
or Vlahovic. It's the outside.
Yeah, look. I think Harry Kane fits the mold of being able to pass the ball because you can't pass the ball, you can't play in Pep's system. But, you know, Erling Haaland's always been linked to City. And it's always felt like one day we're going to see Erling Haaland in sky blue. Like, he looks like a guy that would wear sky and blue. Like, it suits him. Harry Kane, as much as they've got the same, you know, hair color and everything else, I don't know if I could see Harry Kane in sky blue as much as I can see Erling Haaland in sky blue. Like, I don't know if it's just the replicant look of Haaland and Harry Kane suiting the white of England and the white of Tottenham. I don't know. But yeah, that's just what I picture in my head.
Interesting. All right. Well, tomorrow we've got a very special show coming up, Nick. Yourself and Ante Jukic returning for your monthly Serie A review. What might be the big talking points coming up tomorrow night with Ante?
Well, one thing we can promise, it will not be 2 hours long. We're not going to go through every team. We're going to.
You can skip maybe Cagliari, you can skip Udinese, a few of the B teams.
Well, yeah, probably a lot of the underperformers, a lot of the nondescript teams is probably the word that we use a lot in the first pod. But there'll be a lot of chat about, I think both Ante and I are very much on the Napoli wagon right now. We'll talk about them. A lot about what's going on with Milan and Inter and sort of how it's becoming a bit of a 3-horse race right now. We'll talk about Juventus, sort of their weird start to the season. Are the Death Stars starting to finally emerge after the last couple of weeks? And I guess we'll just talk a little bit about everything. There's a lot of different sort of themes emerging from these opening few rounds. Fiorentina playing some nice football. Roma are being Roma right now and starting to show a bit more Jose Mourinho sort of style. And what's the deal with Lazio, man? Like, they play sometimes some brilliant football and then get completely carved up by Bologna. So there's a lot.
Is that a Seinfeld bit?
Into.
What's the deal with Lazio?
It'd probably be Jerry Seinfeld or Seinfeldi or something like that.
Seinfeldinho.
He's Italian equivalent. But yes, tune in tomorrow, 7 p.m. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure, because Ante's got a lot to say. Considering he's not on the Twitter sphere anymore, he's got a lot to say, and you're going to want to hear it.
Absolutely. We've got a big program coming up on Thursday evening as well. Myself and George Janikian have a plethora of high-profile guests. Chris Bellavana, CEO of Western United, will be joining us. He had to cancel last week, unfortunately. But we have plans to get him on Thursday, so hopefully that one comes through this time. Tony Sage, owner of Perth Glory, is going to join us to talk about the Daniel Sturridge signing and how Perth is shaping up for this new season. And we've also got a bit of a Victorian parochial story. I know we're a little bit Victorian-centric at times, but this is an interesting one, and I think has wider implications for other NPL competitions around Australia. And that is the argument brought by the United Football Group, which is a few clubs that have banded together to petition Football Victoria to honour their promotion and their ladder position when the season was abandoned. And it's going to be very interesting. So Dave Svetkovsky from the Preston Lions is going to join us on Thursday night as well. Nick, that's all we've got time for. Big thank you to everybody who tuned in and asked questions. Stan has come through right at the end of the show asking about Ange at Celtic. I think we're going to have to save that one for next week. Maybe we'll even get our friend Chris McLaughlin on the blower from Scotland and see if we can organise a catch-up with him. It's not all rosy at Celtic at the moment.
Maybe we can also potentially get a Max Russian or Barry Glendenning, Josh. I hear that you had a bit of a mention on the Guardian Football Weekly last week. Never thought I'd hear Barry Glendenning say Josh Parrish, but it was great. Like, I was hoping you'd say something like, I was reading the article on my big telly while I was watching the other game that was on at the same time on the laptop or something.
Yes, with the Champions League being more relevant in a couple of weeks' time, maybe we can touch base with our friends over at Stan Sports. Of course, international break on the horizon. So we'll have a lot to talk about next Tuesday. We will. We'll have a Japan game to talk about as well. So, plenty
at
on
9:14.
Yes, 9:14 p.m. Set your alarms. Or 8:14 if you live in Queensland. Or oh god, what time is it in South Australia?
6:14 in Perth. 8:44 in South Australia, I think.
Oh, daylight savings in Australia, always a joy. Yeah. Thanks, Nick.
No worries.